Why does the black man serve the white man? Why does everything the black man do benefit the white man? Why does the black man say freedom is doing what I want to do? And why is it that everything he wants to do enriches the European?
Welcome to the desert of the real.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Mr. Holipsism. I'm here to give the final word on the N-word. A follow-up to a video I just recently did, and I had gotten so many responses from it offline and online that I decided to make this video to put the final period on this whole N-word discussion. First, just want to apologize to whoever was trying to get a word in that video, because I couldn't hear exactly everything that was going on. So I noticed somebody wanted to talk, but they weren't allowed to speak, and I was talking over them. It wasn't on purpose. I honestly didn't hear you until I went and I heard the video itself. I think it might have been Jesse. So if that's the case, Jesse, I apologize. I didn't mean to do that and cut your voice off, because your voice is important and it needs to be heard. My voice is no more important than anyone else's. So just wanted to clear that up. My overall thesis with this video is that the N-word usage by black people is a psychological tactic, a coping mechanism used to combat and live with the system of white supremacy. And I touched on this in the video, and I said that the N-word is just the end result of a psychological tactic and a coping mechanism that black African people use to deal with slavery. I've used the example of how we took the scraps and we turned the scraps into delicacies and meals. So they gave us bad stuff, and instead of us, feeling bad and just totally just feeling like we were devalued and worthless, we would take the stuff and say, well, you're going to give me bad stuff, or watch what I do with it. We have these coping mechanisms, and my thing is, people are putting a value judgment on the coping mechanism, but not judging why the coping mechanism exists in the first place. And I'm gonna touch on that throughout this dissertation that I'm about to give, because I want to go into some technical things in terms of what is actually happening when we do this stuff. And the N-word just didn't come up out of a vacuum. There's a social and economic and political historical context to that word. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is post-traumatic slave syndrome, or PTSS. Now, what is post-traumatic slavery syndrome? PTSS, coined by author and clinical psychologist Joy DeGruy, describes a set of behaviors, beliefs, and actions associated with or related to multi-generational trauma experienced by African Americans that may be inclusive of, but not limited to, undiagnosed and untreated post-traumatic stress disorder that was classified as PTSD in enslaved Africans. PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome, is an explanatory theory which posits that centuries of slavery in the United States, followed by systematic and structural racism and oppression, have resulted in multi-generational maladaptive behaviors, which originated as survival strategies. The syndrome continues because children whose parents suffer from PTSS will often be indoctrinated into the same behaviors long after the behaviors have lost their contextual effectiveness. Now, they may sound a little scholarly and for the average person, but to put it in layman's terms, that right there, long after the behaviors have lost their contextual effectiveness, refers to the people who say that slavery was a long time ago. So that's what she's saying. It's like, yeah, slavery was a long time ago, but the effects of slavery and the behaviors, the maladaptive behaviors, continue on generations after the actual event has ended. And that is not bullshit. This is insight. There's a field in psychology dedicated to this stuff. So if you're going to dismiss that, then you might as well dismiss the whole field of psychology. Mr. Grew states that the PTSS is not a disorder that can simply be treated and remedied clinically, but rather must necessarily require a profound social and structural change in Americans and American institutions that continue to promote inequalities and injustice. Now, Miss DeGrew, Joy DeGrew, holds a she holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in communication. She holds a master's degree in social work, a master's degree in clinical psychology, and a PhD in social work research. She also teaches social work at Portland State University and gives lectures on PTSS nationally and internationally. She also wrote the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome: America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing, a book that you should definitely cop, and I'm going to put the link to it in the description box. So in other words, she's not just pulling this information out of her ass. Now, I agree with Mr. Grew that a change must happen in order to remedy PTSS. I disagree that the change will happen in Americans and American institutions that promote inequalities and injustice and perpetuate the system of white supremacy. My position is that the change can only happen in our Black African minds and in our collective consciousness. Now, the basis for post-traumatic slave syndrome, or PTSS, is post-traumatic. She says that's untreated post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, what is post-traumatic stress disorder? Post-traumatic stress disorder is a severe condition that may also develop after a person is exposed to one or more traumatic events, such as sexual assault, serious injury, or the threat of death. The diagnosis may be given when a group of symptoms such as disturbing reoccurring flashbacks, avoidance or numbing of memories of the event, and hyperarousal, high levels of anxiety. Now, those are the three types of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. While I read the symptoms and the attributes of each symptom to you, I want you to think about yourself and every Black African person you know or have ever met, friends, family, etc., and ask yourself if you've ever exhibited these symptoms or seen them in other African people. Now, one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder is reliving the event, which disturbs day-to-day activity. Now, the attributes of this is flashbacks, episodes in which the event seems to be happening again and again, repeated upsetting memories of the event, repeated nightmares of the event, strong uncomfortable reactions to situations that remind you of the event. The second symptom is avoidance, and I see this a lot. Emotional numbing or feeling as though you do not care about anything, feeling detached, not able to remember important parts of the event. Sound familiar? Not interested in normal activities, showing less of your moods, avoiding places, people, or thoughts that remind you of the event. That sounds very familiar to my show, which people avoid it like the plague. Feeling like you have no future. I think avoidance is probably one of the number one tactics that Black African people use to counter or to deal with the effects of white supremacist system. The third is hyperarousal. Always scanning your surroundings for signs of danger, hypervigilance, not able to concentrate, startled easily, feeling irritable or having outbursts of anger. Sounds familiar. Trouble falling or staying asleep. Now, what I'm going to add into the mix on top of the post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm going to add a condition called battered women or / battered person syndrome. It used to be battered women syndrome, then they changed it to battered person syndrome. And battered person syndrome is a physical and psychological condition of a person who has suffered usually persistent emotional, physical, or sexual abuse from another person. These are some of the symptoms of battered women or battered person syndrome. The abused thinks that the violence was his or her fault, and you hear that a lot from the Jesse Lee Petersons and the rest of these clowns, these conservative clowns. The abused has an inability to place the responsibility for the violence elsewhere. The abused fears for his or her life and the lives of his or her children. That's particularly compelling after the Trayvon Martin decision, or the George Zimmerman verdict, I should say. The abused has now this one is very important. The abused has an irrational belief that the abuser is omnipresent and omniscient. I'm going to get back to that one. Now, how does the N-word relate to these conditions? The process of taking bad and making it good is a psychological tactic to live with injustice woven into the fabric of our reality. In other words, like in battered person syndrome, the abused has an irrational belief that the abuser is omnipresent and omniscient, which is why you usually hear things said in the Black African community like, how are we supposed to establish infrastructure and organize ourselves without the white man doing something to stop it? Or, the white man will never allow us to organize amongst ourselves, etc., ad infinitum. There's a countless other things I can mention, but that's just two off the bat. Now, what these people fail to realize is that the opposite of utilizing this psychological tactic would be to accomplish the goal of the white supremacist system for Black African people. Now, what's the goal? That goal is complete and utter hopelessness and complete devastation of the Black African self-esteem. The goal is Black African people accepting their inferiority on a conscious instead of unconscious level. So in other words, we will consciously accept what we unconsciously do anyway. Once this goal is accomplished, Black African people can merge into invisibility with the dominant white supremacist power structure and transform our collective Black African culture and turn into chocolate-covered Europeans. That's the goal. So these coping mechanisms, or I should say, the psychological tactic Black African people utilize, these coping mechanisms, is good in terms of dealing with the context of the white supremacist power structure on a short-term coping level, but bad as a long-term solution to actually fixing the problem. And this is the reason why placing value on the usage of the N-word and judging it from a good and bad perspective minus the content in which the word emerged is short-sighted thinking, and it lacks both depth and nuance that the psychological tactic deserves. So, well, let me not get ahead of myself. Attacking the psychological tactic Black African people utilize to counter and exist in a system of white supremacy, instead of shining the spotlight on and attacking the system of white supremacy itself, is also a psychological tactic produced by the system of white supremacy. That's the ironic thing about it. What do I mean? The same people who attack the usage of the N-word are just as damaged by post-traumatic slave syndrome as the people they attack for using the N-word. They are deflecting their aggression onto the victim because of their unconscious or conscious fear of the repercussions of attacking the white supremacist system itself. The example of that is Bill Cosby's rant, and the reason why people wondered why I went so hard at him. You're not attacking the system, but you're attacking our coping mechanisms to deal with the system. And why are you doing that? Because you're afraid. Because on a conscious and an unconscious level, you realize that if you attack the system, then you're going to have to deal with the white supremacist power structure, and you don't want to do that. So what do? You pick on the powerless. You pick on the people who are doing the best that they can to cope with the system and attacking them and the means in which they're doing it. We can argue about whether the usage of the N-word is positive or negative or whatever, but we cannot argue about how the N-word was produced. And it's produced from that psychological tactic of trying to turn something bad into something good in order for you to cope with the existence of your sad and oppressed reality. That is a fact, and nobody can argue that. So what's the conclusion? Do we want to fix a quick fix or a long-term solution? Now, if we want a quick fix, then my suggestion is don't attack the N-word. Why? Because you want to cope with the system and live with injustice woven into the fabric of your reality and pass that legacy on to the next generation of black African children so it could be perpetuated multi-generationally. In short, it makes no sense to attack a coping mechanism when you don't desire black power. Now, what is the long-term solution? The long-term solution is to not even deal with the N-word. The long-term solution is to acknowledge yourself and reclaim your culture as black African people. Be an African. Be proud of your culture. Be proud of your history. And like the Jews say, never again. We went through a lot, and we should have in our museum of black African history, there should be American history, black African American history, detailing all of the things, all of the atrocities that we went through during the Middle Passages, during that chattel slavery, system. We shouldn't run away from it. We should embrace it and acknowledge it as a part of black African history. Not separate from continental African history, but all a part of the same thing. African history all across the globe. We have to embrace ourselves as black African people proudly. Look at our history proudly. Look at our atrocities proudly. Look at our accomplishments proudly. Claim it and say, never fucking again. It's never going to happen again, European. You're never gonna come into our culture, come into our systems, and turn us against each other and take what we've built. Not gonna happen. That's a long-term solution. Once you acknowledge who you are as African people, and let me break it down more specifically. Well, I want to deal with black African people in America and black African people on the continent because I don't think that it's separate from one another. Once we all acknowledge ourselves as African people, and once we acknowledge that the motherland is our homeland, and we fight to protect and control that motherland, and get rid of neo-colonialism and colonialism on Africa, in Africa, as well as dealing with the white supremacist, Western white supremacist system here in America, we need to establish a capital, a country, and use that country as a capital for our united countries of Africa. A base of operations, so to speak, a Washington, D.C. of Africa. I'm giving the equivalent so we can understand what I'm talking about. Once we establish what that capital of the African continent is going to be, then what we have to do is develop infrastructure on that continent. We have to modernize that continent. Not the continent, that country, sorry. I'm getting confused. We have to modernize the country that we pick as the capital. And when I say modernize and when I say infrastructure, just go back to my video where I talk about hard infrastructure and soft infrastructure. We have to develop the hard infrastructure first. And that can all be financed by black African people globally. The only thing that we need to do is make the decision to actually do it. That's all. It can be financed by Africans in America, Africans in the UK, Africans in Brazil, Africans in South America, North America, wherever black African people are, black African people can utilize their resources to finance and funnel it to Africa and funnel it to that country in Africa so that we can develop our capital. When that's done and we put that hard infrastructure in place, then we start putting those institutions in place, those soft infrastructures. And the whole purpose of doing this is so that we can reclaim the African continent and use Africa as a base of operations for whatever we're doing anywhere on the face of the earth. That is a long-term solution. And notice, in my rant about this, I didn't even mention religion. I didn't even mention what your way of life or your style is. You need to have a place to live. You need to have a place where you can feel comfortable. You need to have a place where you don't have to worry about going outside and getting shot by police. You need to have a place where you don't have to worry about going to a bank and being refused a loan. You need to control the context of your reality. You need to be a human being. Right now, black folks in America and black folks globally don't know how to be just a human being, just to exist stress free and have an environment where you're not judged as an inferior person. You got to have your own shit. You got to get out of mommy and daddy's house. And when you get your own shit, you can't have it integrated. You can't shamar more your shit up. It has to be controlled and operated by black African people unapologetically. And whoever thinks it's racist, fuck them. Whoever thinks it's prejudice, fuck them. Whoever thinks it's discriminatory, fuck them. At least you got your own. Are you really that concerned when you're in your apartment about what somebody thinks about what you're doing in your apartment or your right to have one? Or do you just live and do what you got to do? And either your apartment or either your home or your piece of land. So that's my period on the whole N-word discussion. We need to concentrate on important things and not attack our people for their coping mechanisms. And that's all I got to say on that. I'll holler at you good people later. Hopefully we don't ever have to talk about this shit ever again and we can get on to more serious subject matter. Peace.